All right, let's do more media bashing. Fox News host Bill O'Reilly, he's facing his Brian Williams moment. O'Reilly accused of embellishing a story about covering the Falklands War back in the 80s. That, of course, the fight between the UK and Argentina. Not too much of a fight, but O'Reilly said that he rescued his cameraman during the war.
Right. Because I was in a situation one time in a war zone in Argentina in the Falklands where my photographer got run down and hit his head and was bleeding from the ear on the concrete, and the Army was chasing us. I had to make a decision, and I dragged them off, but at the same time I'm looking around and trying to do my job, but I figured I had to get this guy out of there because that was more important.
Now, O'Reilly's former colleagues over at CBS at the time, they've come out saying that he was nowhere near the fighting. They say he covered the war from Buenos Aires, which is located over 1,000 miles from all the action. Now, early this month, O'Reilly was very outspoken on the controversy surrounding NBC's Brian Williams, who has been suspended from the network for 6 months for embellishing possibly several stories, but certainly a war story of his own.
When hard news people deceive their viewers and readers to advance a political agenda, that's when the nation gets hurt. All Americans who love their country should think about what has happened to Brian Williams, should think about other news agencies that are distorting the facts. We should all open that proverbial network window and yell out, "We're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore."
It's too easy, but I almost did that. Okay. To this end, he, for whatever it's worth, Bill O'Reilly says that it's a hit job from the folks over at Mother Jones. David Korn, I believe, the reporter who did the story on this, who stands by his story. He promises also, Bill O'Reilly, there'll be more clarity in the coming days as to what actually happened or not. But we had this debate saying, oh, come on, these guys make it. But if you purport yourself, certainly Brian Williams, to be this anchor, right, which from whatever you say here, people have an expectation and a right here to believe that you're going to give them the unvarnished truth. I'm sorry, but it does come with the territory. I don't think Brian Williams should be unhireable going forward. I think everyone's allowed to make certain mistakes here, but there should be consequences for it. And it's going to be interesting what's going to happen with Bill O'Reilly here. But I guess, Dom, I start with you. Is there a distinction between being a network anchor, no, seriously, and then with Bill O'Reilly, maybe pot calling kettle black to a degree?
Why it's gotta be black?
I know, as soon as I said it, right? But
you walked into that.
I walked. I handed him the bat, so, but my point is there a difference with O'Reilly saying what he's saying and a Brian Williams saying in terms of, Fox has already come out in support of him, but is there a difference with what they did? Let's say, and we don't know yet, it is proven untrue here that Bill O'Reilly didn't do what he claimed to do to rescue his cameraman.
I'm going to go on a limb right now, completely on a limb. It's untrue. I can tell you now it's untrue. All right, first of all, we all know that you develop a strong friendship when you're out in a in a riot, in a war situation with your photographer. So I'll give him that much. But my question to you, Richard, is, and this is no indication of us here, excluding the professor, what is wrong with these anchors that are quote embellishing these stories? Let's face it, to be in television, you have to have a huge ego. To be in one of these chairs, you got to have a huge ego, right? Let's admit it, right? Except for Andrew, right?
It's
his
very
ego.
true. No, all of you.
But Richard, first of all, he's lying. But come on, he's Bill O'Reilly. Do you think people look at him as a serious newscaster?
Well, I guess he answered it in that.
And Fox is going to stand by him no matter what.
They are. Do you think there's a distinction between the two? Because he fancies himself. Does it matter what you think of yourself or what you're perceived to be? Because if you are a opinionated person who's supposed to give your opinions, you're held, I think, to a different standard than somebody who is supposed to be the straight, unvarnished, down the middle of the road, just the facts man. This Walter Cronkite and is held to a different standard than Geraldo Rivera. But
is there a difference between what Williams is accused of doing and what O'Reilly is accused of doing? No, there's not much of a difference between the two. In fact, I'm not really sure there's any difference at all. The difference is Brian Williams is a network news anchor and has to be a completely credible source throughout all of this. There are a lot of talented journalists at Fox News. I know some of them. There are a lot of people who do good work. Nobody's going to confuse any of those people with Bill O'Reilly. And so Bill O'Reilly, I think, gets a pass, or will get a pass to a certain degree, because I don't think there's that level of expectation on him. Also because he's Fox News' highest rated star.
I totally
and
disagree with
revenue
all of
generator.
you. I'm going to defend Bill O'Reilly on
Okay.
this. First of all, Brian Williams was quote unquote attacked. This came out by people who he claimed he was with at the time. You know, the military men who felt that he had been making these statements that were untrue, that he had been making repeatedly and recently. This goes back to 1982, and they are made by a reporter from a very liberal magazine,
one
Mother
second.
Jones.
But since then,
And-
since then,
and-
7 CBS colleagues that Bill O'Reilly worked with at the time that were there, they all claimed that didn't happen.
But what didn't happen? He said he was in a war zone. He was in Buenos Aires. We know that. The New York Times itself said there were guns being shot at the time. I mean, he was in a protest. Granted, it's not a war zone as we might think of it, but it was a protest for a war. And you know what?
Can I just, for me, what bothers me about these stories is, listen.
Doesn't this feel like an attack to a certain extent for somebody to go back to 1982 and dredge up because he's the most popular, most watched cable news network? That's why they went after it.
Yes, Jeannie, but that doesn't make it wrong.
Yeah.
That doesn't make the facts of it wrong. Yes, I think it is an attack.
It is an attack.
Yes, I think it's a rebuttal on O'Reilly and a rebuttal to Brian
Yeah.
Williams. But
It's
that
an
doesn't
attack.
make,
No,
that doesn't
yeah.
make the fact that they're reporting
But you know what
incorrect or
bothers me a
what
great
O'Reilly
deal
did.
is from these guys is, first of all, there's hypocrisy. Whenever there's hypocrisy from somebody, when you comment on somebody else, you open yourself up for it. And secondly, I just saw, we don't have time for it, but if you happen to see anyone see 60 Minutes last night, they did a special in memoriam really on Bob Simon. That was a war correspondent. That was a guy who never pounded his chest on everything. But I saw the pieces he did, one in particular in Saigon, where he was on scene with his cameraman when all of a sudden these refugees that were in a truck hit a landmine. And you saw right in front of you in Technicolor people either dead or children even crying in agony. And you put in context what a real war reporter is versus these frauds who do this, and it belittles the real work from the people who do this, from the Richard Engels and the rest of the world.
But nobody thinks that Bill O'Reilly is a war correspondent. Nobody claims
He'll
he
tell
is.
you. He does.
He said he covered one war.
No, if
That's
you
what
listen
he
to him,
said.
and he talks about how, and he's rescuing people and all the rest.
He
just
said
stop.
one cameraman. And by the way,
How many does he have to say?
And the hypocrisy there has been a long-standing feud between NBC, MSNBC, and Fox that goes back. They fight all the time. They do it publicly, and it increases their ratings. Everybody knows that. I mean, that's what he was doing. Granted,
Jeannie,
it sounds
Jeannie,
hypocritical.
Again, it doesn't make it right. And you shouldn't, there's certain things if you want to embellish because it's TV or whatever, okay, but you don't
But
about
what exactly
war.
did he embellish on his
If
show?
it's true that he
And
never
when?
saved, and he's dodging gunfire and he's saving his cameraman, to me, I got a problem with that, okay?
He didn't say he was saving his life. He said he pulled him out.
He
come
was
on.
bleeding from the head and he dragged
A
him to
little
safety.
blood never killed anybody,
Who's the hero in
Richard.
O'Reilly's
All right,
story?
there may be a
the
little
hero
blood
of
on the
the
next
story?
one. We're going to
O'Reilly.
talk about the Oscars last night. Good, bad, whatever. We'll get into it after this.